Sarah is a middle-class mom of two in a middle state somewhere in the middle of America. That's as descriptive as we can get. Because Sarah wants to share what happened to her without sharing her. And Sarah went through the ringer. She couldn't understand why she felt such debilitating depression. On paper, she seemed to be doing everything right. She practiced yoga, ate well, and led a healthy lifestyle. She was raising two nice and genuinely well-adjusted children. Sarah had an incredibly supportive family. She knew this because they supported her through a difficult cancer treatment. Yet Sarah was consumed by dark ruminating, the darkest kind.
I got to a point where I just kind of felt numb. Like I wasn't really happy and I wasn't really sad. I was just kind of milquetoast. I was just kind of like blah. I wasn't experiencing a wide enough range of emotions to feel like my human experience was meaningful. I was very suicidal. I was very despondent, just grasping at straws. I have done meditation and yoga, and I eat healthy, and I run, and I'm on an SSRI, and I'm kind of at my wit's end of like, I don't know what other options I have.
When Sarah was suicidal, her children noticed. She says it was obvious. When they saw her like this, her kids were openly scared. Sarah had been to plenty of talk therapy, but it wasn't solving the problem. Intuitively, she knew people loved her, but she couldn't stop apologizing. Sarah never felt good enough for her family. Sometimes, even a gentle embrace from her husband would send her into a sobbing fit. The couple had become physically estranged. Her husband had stopped being affectionate because he feared it would trigger a depressive meltdown. To be fair, traditional treatment and therapy were somewhat helpful. Zoloft, one of the antidepressants she tried, took the edge off of the otherwise brutal and constant rumination. Sarah was more stable on the drug, and she felt more approachable. Her relationships became more manageable. She could work, raise her kids, and she wasn't breaking down and crying around her husband. But eventually, the Zoloft and other antidepressants created complications. First, Sarah's cancer medications interacted poorly with Zoloft. She doesn't want to go into details. Second, the antidepressants further strained relations with her husband in unexpected places, notably the bedroom. Her husband wanted to be desired physically, but Sarah just didn't feel it.
I was just kind of a little bit of a zombie, and then I'd go, oh, actually, we need to connect. Like, and he was kind of shy to approach me and didn't want to bother me about it. And then when I would approach him, then he'd say, well, this feels very forced. Like, you're just doing this because, you think you have to.
Eventually, Sarah's therapist proposed a relatively new treatment, a psychedelic one. Ketamine is a widely used surgical anesthesia, but it also has powerful antidepressant effects. Under high ketamine doses, people go into a dreamlike state, and in this state are often able to process memories that are often too painful to deal with otherwise. Sarah was no stranger to psychedelics. She'd experimented years ago with LSD and magic mushrooms. Both are known to have antidepressant properties in therapeutic settings. But Sarah's experiments were just that, experimental. Sarah's first ketamine treatments were positive, but they did not seem to relieve her of her depression and suicidal thoughts. And they didn't help her understand the source of her depression. Eventually, she decided to try psychedelic medicine again, this time with a different mental health provider, but not without some reservations.
Yeah, there was fear that I wouldn't come back, that I'd go into some ketamine coma and I'd fry my brain. And there was that fear of like abandoning my children. And, my mom died when I was young and I just didn't want to do that. And there was also a fear that I would have such a terrible trip that I would have a psychotic break and wouldn't be okay from that, would never be okay from that.
Sarah says she's kind of a control freak and has a hard time letting go. But she was also desperate. She took the trip. The trip began in a dimly lit room at the clinic. As Sarah sat in a comfortable chair, an IV of ketamine was placed in her arm. In minutes, as the psychedelic medicine coursed through her body, she drifted off into a dreamlike state. Imagine the first semi-conscious seconds of waking up from a long, deep sleep. Only those seconds last an hour. Under the ketamine, Sarah began seeing things. In her dream, a building stood out in the middle of a big cosmopolitan city. She could empathize with the hundreds of families she could see through the windows. Soon, she witnessed the glow of different family members dissolve from a vision that appeared like a divorce. But it wasn't a sad occasion, as each person floated into another room with a new, loving family unit. To Sarah, this was a revelation. As the child of a difficult divorce, she realized how the scars of feeling unloved during her parents' separation never fully healed. But in her psychedelic vision, she understood separation as a natural part of life. Sarah said her energy could leave and flow elsewhere. That is, Sarah did not have to take the scars of being unloved from her childhood into her role as a mother. She had tied perfection to receiving love. She says that she could choose to accept the unconditional love of her husband and children, even if she is imperfect. Sarah recalls feeling unusually pleasant the day she came home from the experience. Her first assignment? To ditch her knee-jerk reaction to apologize. It worked. She was determined to be more mindful every time she wanted to say sorry. Instead, she decided that she could just show up and be enough. Soon, relationships at home improved. Her husband, who had avoided touching her as a trigger, could now come up from behind and throw his arms around her with a hug. It was the little things like this that gave her more confidence and started them down the road to repairing intimacy in their marriage. And initiating intimacy was now running both ways. She started to feel a fuller and more intense range of emotions and became more comfortable in her body. Today, she is less critical about her weight and body image.
Years of eating disorders and body dysmorphia and body shame and things had prevented me for a long time from really being present in my body while I'm, doing this physical act. And it just definitely created more connection between us and more trust and more, honesty and I'm more mindful about, approaching him.
Feeling better about her body has translated into feeling the physical desire her husband needed. Sarah still has shaky days and must be vigilant to practice a certain kind of mindfulness. Working with a therapist, she has learned how to recall her experience on high doses of ketamine, experiences which helped her break her deeply reinforced beliefs and become less judgmental about herself. Good days or bad, she's on the path to improve. At her core, Sarah knows the truth, that she's worth being here. Sarah thinks her latest psychedelic experience worked because of her mindset and the setting she was in. In many psychedelic therapy settings, patients sit in a group and don't talk. Or they might see a new therapist specially trained in psychedelics and not the one they normally see. But Sarah? She was having therapy during her trip, and with someone she knew really well. It was the therapist she had seen for years. That trusted person was the one asking questions, inviting her to describe the visualizations in the middle of her trip. That helped Sarah uncover the meaning of what happened in her dreamlike state and gain the courage to dive deeper into the experience. Ordinarily, Sarah admits, anxiety would get the best of her. She would feel the need to do anything else but work through her difficult emotions. But not now. Not anymore.